Number 1.
Please listen carefully. In this question, you will be asked to give your opinion about a familiar topic. After you hear the question, you will have 15 seconds to prepare your response and 45 seconds to speak.
State whether you agree or disagree with the following statement. Then explain your reasons, using specific details in your explanation. Learning through online courses is more effective than learning in the traditional classroom setting.
You may begin to prepare your response after the beep. Please begin speaking after the beep.
Number 2.
Please listen carefully. In this question, you will read a short passage about a campus situation and then listen to a conversation on the same topic. You will then answer a question using information from both the reading passage and the conversation. After you hear the question, you will have 30 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak.
Read an article in the campus newspaper. You will have 45 seconds to read the article. Begin reading now. Now listen to two students discussing the article.
Hey, did you read about this plan?
Yeah, and I think it's a really great idea.
Why's that?
Well, a lot of new students really need this. I mean, it's not just about getting extra help with the course material. They'll probably also get information about things like taking notes or the best way to study for exams.
Yeah, I barely even knew how to do those things when I first came here.
Neither did I. So these are things most students wind up having to learn on their own at first. That's why so many of them have a hard time.
And it's probably good that they can work with somebody who has the same interests.
Right. That would be a real advantage, to get information about the classes you're going to need to take from somebody who's already taken those classes. And they could recommend professors and tell you who the best advisors in the department are. Things like that.
I see what you mean. So new students could get access to information about the program from another student's point of view.
Exactly.
The woman expresses her opinion about the university's plan. Briefly summarize the plan, then state her opinion about the plan, and explain the reasons she gives for holding that opinion.
You may begin to prepare your response after the beep. Please begin speaking after the beep.
Number 3.
Please listen carefully. In this question, you will read a short passage on an academic subject and then listen to part of a lecture on the same topic. You will then answer a question using information from both the reading passage and the lecture. After you hear the question, you will have 30 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak.
Now read the passage from a psychology textbook. You have 45 seconds to read the passage. Begin reading now. Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic in a psychology class.
This happens all the time with kids in schools. Say there's a little boy or girl who's just starting school. Well, they're not really used to the rules about proper behavior for a classroom. So at the beginning they might, interrupt the teacher, walk around the classroom when they're supposed to be sitting down. Just misbehaving in general. Okay, but what happens? Well, the teacher gets angry with them when they act this way. They might get punished. They have to sit at their desks when everyone else is allowed to go outside and play. And they certainly don't like that. Soon, they'll learn that this kind of behavior gets them in trouble. They'll also learn that when they raise their hand to talk to the teacher and sit quietly and pay attention during class, they're rewarded. The teacher tells them she's proud of them and maybe puts little happy face stickers on their homework. Now that their behavior gets a good reaction from the teacher, the kids learn to always act this way in class and not behave the way they used to.
Using the example from the lecture, explain what behavior modification is and how it works.
You may begin to prepare your response after the beep. Please begin speaking after the beep.
Number 4.
Please listen carefully. In this question, you will listen to part of a lecture. You will then be asked to summarize important information from the lecture. After you hear the question, you will have 20 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak.
Listen to part of a lecture in a biology class.
So, okay, we've been talking about frogs, and like all amphibians, frogs have thin skin, which means that they lose moisture through their skin easily. Now, typically, we think of frogs as living in wet environments, but for frogs who live in dry places with desert-like conditions, this can be a problem. Frogs have been able to survive in such areas by having different physical features, special dry climate features that help them maintain an adequate level of moisture in their cells and avoid drying out. Some frogs do this by preventing water loss through their skin. By creating a sort of covering over their skin, they greatly reduce their skin's exposure to the dry air. The covering acts like a barrier that locks in moisture. For example, some frogs secrete a substance through their skin, a fatty substance that they rub all over their skin using their hands and feet, which creates a waxy layer all around their bodies that's almost completely watertight. Other frogs maintain an adequate level of moisture through a different physical feature, one that allows them to store water inside their bodies for later use. A specially modified internal organ inside their bodies enables them to have a high water storage capacity. So the frogs are able to absorb and store moisture during wet, rainy times, which they can rely on to get through dry periods. The aptly named water-holding frog, for example, has a bladder that is highly elastic and stretchable. When it does rain, the frog absorbs water through its skin, and its bladder stretches to hold this extra water. The water is then slowly released from the special bladder into the frog's internal tissues until the next rain, which might not be for several months.
Using points and examples from the lecture, explain 2 dry climate features of frogs.
You may begin to prepare your response after the beep. Please begin speaking after the beep.